Yeah, let's try to keep it short. We want to have time for public, and we go into session at 2 o'clock, so we'll go as long as we can until 2 o'clock. Senator Nielsen, you have the floor. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would appear to me, though, that no one here in the panel really directly or specifically represents anyone from the Sacramento or San Joaquin Valleys. And to me, that's kind of an omission. We have legislators who could speak for the Sacramento and San Joaquin Valleys, and I talk about the Central Valley and the Southern Valley, too. Sacramento maybe not so much involved in this, but we need to have that kind of input. Our legislators can speak for it, but I think that it's important that that be of note. Mr. Thompson, in his presentation, spoke to, and I'm getting to the issue of the financing. I took some notes as he talked, and the ability to finance and predicative factors, litigation, ability to spend the monies before 9/17, the securitization of the cap and trade dollars, the completing the Bakersfield to Trans Bay, and then I took a note, the vulnerability of the initial operating segment. And then later he spoke to the issue that kept hitting my mind in the early portion of this hearing. I looked out over this group here and I was envisioning a group of bankers who are contemplating financing something like this and what would be on their minds. And, you know, Mr. Thompson, you brought it home to me. Those points that you raised, but then you used the word Barclays Bank. And you talked about prevailing in litigation. That's nothing that can be guaranteed. Technical and plumbing. And that's done nothing but change all the way through this whole process with the train. And legislation and CARB and extending beyond 2020 and the 25% guarantee of the cap and trade revenues. None of those things can be guaranteed unless we do a constitutional amendment, and that's not likely to happen. I think that the financing then is very shaky here. Can anybody give me comfort that any of these factors that anyone's going to finance this would have high degree of assurance that this is a good bet? Or let me ask a specific question to Mr. Thompson about the Fairview Group, about the $40 billion funding gap, phase one. And maybe this initial operating segment's all we're going to get. Would ridership be enough? Would that stand alone justify anything? Even taking into account what Mr. Richards said about the multiple benefits if we improve the rail and that helps with the freight. But ridership's not going to do it.
What my statement said was that even if you accept the forecast of the profits to be made from ridership, there remains a $10 billion gap in phase one. If you add to that the $5.2 billion on cap and trade and the $2.9 billion on the other, that gets us close to $19 billion that is not identified. And I don't know how to assess what the risk of political action or other things is, but our objective is to make sure you know that this money is not identified.
And that, I must use the word, terrifies me. And the other thing that came to mind, I'm thinking a private sector investor would say, what, they'd leave the place in a minute. And then came to mind, only government would think about financing something like this. And I don't know how the taxpayers could ever contemplate, or how we, the legislators, would dare speak on their behalf to contemplate this. It's too elusive. It seems to me something that really comes to mind as far as whatever we do, the legislature, prospectively, we sure have to exercise an awful lot more, the administrative and the executive branches, a lot more oversight. I don't know if we're capable of doing that. But all of the changes that have come to pass, how can we find comfort? Mr. Rickard, very respectfully, there have been so many changes. How can we find comfort? It seems like it's almost careening down the tracks, not steadily going with the well-planned and executed effort. Then this is about engineering as well. What can you do to put me more at ease?
Senator Nielsen, I think that one of the things I would ask people to understand is that the number of constraints that we have, I mean, this is an enormous enterprise. If we had all the money in the world and we could just start building it, it would be an enormous enterprise. We don't have all the money in the world, and we have all these constraints. The statute and the initiative put requirements in us that basically from the beginning there has to be an operation without a subsidy. That means we have to build long enough to be able to do that. I think that while it's easy to step back and say, gee, where is this going? If you look at how do we build this thing within the constraints of the Bond Act, within the constraints of the federal money and its timing and so forth, I think what we've done for you here is laid out a rational. And we've also said to you, sir, that it is different than what we talked about 2 years ago, but here are the reasons why it's different. And I come back to what I was saying before. The most important thing in our mind, and it's something that we have confidence we can do, is to get an operating segment up and running as fast as possible. That will change the game with respect to the private sector, and it will have utility. So I don't know if I can fully satisfy you, sir, but I will tell you that what may look kind of strange looks more rational when you look at the context of the constraints that we're operating in.
I'm trying. Did you have something to add, sir?
Yeah, I just wanted to add this notion of independent utility. In the previous administration of the High-Speed Authority, there were major gunfights between the Southern California Transportation Commissions and the High-Speed Authority. We were fearful that they were going to build something that would have no utility, no benefit in the event the project was never completed. So what independent utility means is even until it gets to us, or if it never gets to us, whatever we've built or done still has benefit. So we don't want to buy something and throw it away in the event that one of these unlikely, unhappy events occurs. We don't want to throw money away.
Then this will be the last one for now. I may have another, Mr. Chairman, but tell me this, because it was kind of hard enough to get to Shafter. I know Shafter. I love Shafter. But how do you explain to people we're going to put the train to Shafter? You don't, what do you have in Shafter? What kind of taxis, buses, what kind of connectivity to get to Los Angeles or anywhere else to Shafter? It's sort of like, well, let's just get something built, then you'll be obliged and you're going to have to finish it up. Is that how we look at it? What can you say to Joe Citizen out there that's having dinner and say, what, we're going to put a speed train to Shafter?
What I say is we don't want to do that. We want to go to Bakersfield. But going back to the constraints, and this is the problem, is that everything leads us down a path. So you go back to the fact that when we came in, it was already decided we were starting in the Central Valley. And I actually think that was the right place to start. I didn't think so before I was on the High-Speed Rail Board, but when I looked at it, I think it's the right place to start. And we looked at the Central Valley. The legislature said, fine, go ahead with the plan, and we started building south. We thought we were going to continue to build south. Shafter is where we have essentially contracted to build. So do we keep building track there and end up short of San Jose? That was our choice. Or do we get something that can go to San Jose knowing that essentially we have a tail track down to Shafter, down from Hanford to Shafter? We cannot do, I have to respectfully disagree with Ms. Peters, whose report I think was very professional and laid out the risks appropriately for you. But she said, well, you have options there. Well, we actually don't have options there because the federal money has to be spent by 2017. If we stop building down there, forgetting even about the contract that we've already signed, we could end up losing that money. Then we don't have the money that we have today. So again, do I look at you as a person who I know has a great deal of common sense and say, oh yeah, we really wanted to build this thing and have it stop in Shafter? No, sir. We were building down there, and when we said we either continue to build down there or we don't get to San Jose, we said we got to stop there and turn around and finish to San Jose. But that's why we want to work with our federal funding partners and get the thing into Bakersfield, connect Bakersfield to San Jose, which makes more sense.
Thank you.